I'm Joan Cartan-Hansen. Thank you for joining us for this Dialogue Web Extra. We're continuing our discussion about STEM education. One of the questions that we came in from Facebook asked about gender discrimination. How do you deal with gender discrimination teaching girls in science, math and science? There's a lot of drop-off as girls proceed in through. What do you do about it?
You know, it's somewhat of an irony because females have now surpassed males in the number of college students. We're over 60% of our college students are now female, and yet in the STEM fields that's not echoed outside of biology. And so there's certainly some work that needs to be done there. One of the programs we have at Boise State is called eGirls, where we bring high school age girls, just females, for 2 days of learning about engineering, where it's just females learning, and their role models are other females and so forth, and so they're learning with female engineering students and female engineers, and so providing the role models that Holly was talking about earlier, but then also showing them that this is something that could be fun and interesting and engaging for them, and encourage them at young age, as the National Research Council report has suggested, is real important.
If I could chime in one thing on that, I think bring in those role models in, but bring in female role models in. One thing we've really tried to do at our school is bring in those female scientists, those female doctors, those female people that the girls can look up to, because sometimes they don't think this is a girl field to go into. So I think that's an important part too.
One of the research pieces I read, the problem is as simple as when a boy asks for help on a problem, the teacher explains and then lets him do it. When the girl asks for help, the teacher will often do it for her. So at that simple, very basic level of how we treat boys differently from girls, is that something that education is working on?
Well, there was also a report last year that showed that elementary teachers female elementary teachers who were somewhat hesitant or nervous about teaching math tend to instill that in their female students as well. And so what we're trying to do in higher ed is address that to make sure the teachers feel comfortable and are well prepared to teach these subjects. But you know, it's going to be a long road there, and it's definitely something that we need to be attentive to.
I know, James, you wanted to get in on this.
Yes, and Joan, what I might add is I think that as Lewis referenced, there has been a shift in some of the STEM areas in which actually there's a disproportionate amount of females, and it tends to be those areas of STEM that have an ethic of care, whether the ethic of care is for other humans, animals, plant life, etc. But that seems to be a characteristic that attracts a lot of women. You know, I'd like to just reference one story quickly. At our McCall Outdoor Science School, approximately 3,000 sixth graders go through that a year. And at the beginning, when they first arrive at McCall, they're asked to draw a picture of a scientist. And that scientist oftentimes appears to be someone like an Albert Einstein, a white male with a lab coat. After a week there, they're asked to draw a picture of a scientist again. And oftentimes, in the vast majority of instances, it reflects them. So I think that the report is just spot on when it talks about when they experience success, it broadens their horizon and kind of disrupts some of those cultural stereotypes that we have.
Another Facebook, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think that also indicates that we need to have it as student-centered. They have to see themselves as the scientists and as the mathematicians. They need to be the voices in the classroom. They need to have the equipment in their hands. It cannot just be a teacher standing at the front of the room modeling. They need to be actively involved and then communicating what their own personal experience was, what they discovered, what their conclusions were, so that they shift that perspective from someone out there or someone in the textbook or on a movie as being the scientist or the mathematician to being this collective group of people in this room who are the scientists.
Another area question we had was about engineering. It says engineering is the poor stepchild in STEM. Is that the case?
I think I think
It comes before the M.
Could
Could have been Mets.
That's right.
E could have been, yeah, trailed on there.
I think from a teacher standpoint, I think sometimes it is. I know we have really been working on in our district about the design process, and that sort of fits with that engineering. It sort of focuses on the science concept, but we try to put that design process in for the kids to hit that engineering part.
Yeah, and it's a focus of our iSTEM Summer Institute, and it's focus on what we're trying to do with a lot of our teacher professional development with our U.S. Department of Education grants and so forth with that. I just returned from 4 days at an engineering education conference. Over 2,000 engineering educators and a lot of K-12 activity. And I think it's a matter of awareness more than it is a matter of being a stepchild. And so, I think as awareness increases, teachers really like the opportunities that engineering design affords in terms of an instructional approach.
And we had a question from Rick who wanted to know, James, particularly have you talk about the joint Micron UI STEM project that seeks to understand the barriers. What is that project?
Absolutely. It's a fantastic example of a public-private partnership. And in this instance, we are looking at barriers, challenges of STEM in the state of Idaho. And so we are at the initial phases of that project. We essentially have done focus groups among educators, parents, children, community members at 10 different locations. And so one of the things I think that while it's premature to really tease out findings from those focus groups that will ultimately contribute to various surveys, I think it's fair to say that Idaho has a lot of diversity, not only of its topography, but within the subcultures. And within a given location in Idaho, there's also considerable variance. And so I think that really speaks to the report suggesting that one size does not fit all for engagement. And so I think that it's a wonderful example, though, of that a lot of parents perhaps are not as familiar or perhaps even uncomfortable with engaging in schools, but yet when you're speaking to themes that really matter to their community, whether it's natural resources or the economy, there's that general level of interest there and passion for the well-being of their children. Most of us as parents certainly want our children to assume family wage positions, and certainly that's pervasive.
We have one more question from Travis, who sent an email. As an elementary school teacher, I'm wondering if we could be doing more at the state level to resource teachers and encourage a deeper level of understanding and interest in science for our students. As it is, science doesn't seem very high on the priority list, and it doesn't make the cuts if I work to find ways to integrate it with my other subjects. Does the panel have any ideas or see anything coming down the pike that I could take advantage of and encourage other colleagues to do as well? Chris?
I think the iSTEM, the project that's been going on in the state for this is the second year I believe it's going on. That is a great one. We did one in our school district that Travis was in that we did the first week of school. So I think just more of those professional development opportunities for these teachers.
And as a parent, do you have any advice in terms of encouraging STEM education in your children's classrooms?
Well, yeah, certainly the appetite is there. And we were talking kind of during prep for the show that I have a little guy who's about to be in second grade, and he and his little brother, who's just starting kindergarten next year, they're scientists. I mean, we're constantly out of white vinegar and baking soda, I mentioned, and anything else, and they want to do things. But I mean, it takes some effort as a parent to give them something. I mean, it doesn't have to be super constructive, but to give them something that's interesting to do. And in some ways, it's concerning because I think, wow, this takes a lot of time. And then when you think about it at the sort of statewide level or at the macro level, I can see where parents where they don't have the time to do that. And so, which makes me more determined to work with my kids on it. And so, but I think probably the biggest thing is that it doesn't have to be like this great acid titration experiment, and I don't need a burette. It can be a very simple thing, and you'd be surprised at what's fascinating to your kids.
And parents are key.
Parents are
Absolutely.
key.
Parents are key. And then also the policy, as they talked about in the National Research Council report there, that to elevate the testing of science to the same level as math and English was one of their recommendations in there in terms of policy. And so if we give it the same kind of attention and then we provide the professional development to attend to that, I think that we would see some pretty big changes happen.
And I'm afraid we've run out of time. Again, thank you very much for joining us for this Dialogue Web Extra.